2025 NHL Draft Lottery is almost here, and we're about to find out who wins the first overall pick. And there's a lot at stake with this draft lottery, especially the first overall prospect race between Misa, Matthew Schaefer. Depending on which team gets first overall, that could really change which player goes first overall. But we're going to be predicting and going through the full preview of this 2025 draft lottery, going from the time of the draft lottery, the odds, and who I think should and will win. So make sure you watch till the end as we go through everything here today, and make sure that subscribe button if you're new for more draft content just like this as we lead up to the draft this summer, presented by BetUS TV. Now, when it comes to the draft lottery, of course, it's not even just about that first overall pick. There are opportunities here for teams to enter the top 3 that otherwise would have been way below. Now, if you guys didn't know, recently we did get some pretty massive changes to the draft lottery rules, and they really do affect who could potentially get that first overall pick and the teams that are even in the field. Elite Prospects goes through some of them, saying that only 2 picks are determined by the lottery, number 1 and number 2. A team cannot move up more than 10 spots in the draft order, and a team cannot win the lottery more than twice in a 5-year span. And that affects a lot. If San Jose or Chicago were to win the first overall picks, for example, they would not be eligible to potentially get Gavin McKenna, Landon DuPont, and it really could change those rebuilds for the future. And a major change that we saw as well, really affecting the teams that were the closest to making the playoffs, saying that if a team in the slots 12 to 16 wins, they move up a maximum 10 spots, and the team with the worst record retains the first overall pick. So for a team maybe in the 16th range, before they could have had a chance at that first overall pick, but now they can only move up a maximum of 10 spots in the draft if they were to get lucky to do so. But then that leads us to the 16 teams in play here, and also the teams that have the chance at first overall. And you can see, of course, as we've seen in different years, it ends with the New York Rangers at 11, the teams that could potentially rise up to number 1. As for the teams that have the best chance in the draft order, it starts at San Jose with 25.5%, then Chicago, Nashville, Philadelphia, Boston, Seattle, Buffalo, Anaheim, Pittsburgh, the Islanders, and the New York Rangers, with the only teams that have the odds for that first overall pick. But of course, you have teams like Detroit, Columbus, Utah, Vancouver, and now the Montreal Canadiens that have the chance to move up in the draft, but maybe not at that number 1 spot. But again, if any of those teams move up, it's almost assured that San Jose would get number 1. The NHL Draft Lottery is a little bit confusing now with the new rules there, but just keep in mind that most likely it's going to be something simple like San Jose, Chicago, or the Nashville Predators winning that first overall selection. Now let's see a team wins that first overall pick, rises right to the top. Who would they even have the chance to select? Who are the best prospects in this year's draft? Well, at the top end of things, it's really between 2 Canadian skaters. Matthew Schaefer is likely on track to be the first overall pick, but of course is a defenseman, and there are some teams out there that maybe would prefer a top centerman like Misa, who for a lot of people is likely going to slot in number 2 in their draft rankings. For me personally, though, I have at number 1, and I think the race between the 2 is going to be especially interesting. It's different than prior years, where maybe you have 2 guys fighting for that first overall pick who are maybe a center or a wing, like 2019, for example, but this year you have 2 fundamentally different positions, and especially for different teams and what they need, that could factor in a lot here to that first overall pick. I mean, we just talked about a team like San Jose. I think they're one of the few teams out there that could also use both of these players, but I think for a lot of teams, especially ones that have had multiple top-end picks, they've likely filled out their prospect pool pretty well already and prioritized 1 or 2 positions, especially in a team like Chicago's case, for example. If they were to get first overall, I think Misa would likely end up being the pick. But don't get me wrong, I think both of these players are the top-end guys of this draft, right up there in their own rights, and in both respects have so much talent to give. Matthew Schaefer especially is one that on the defensive side was such a dominant player to start out this OHL season. In 17 games, 7 goals, 22 points, was such a great part of that Canadian U20 team before he had that unfortunate injury, which looks to be taking him out throughout the rest of this season, which is a shame, but the talent was still pretty clearly on display. If you're looking for somebody with confidence, with poise with the puck, the ability to transition so effortlessly with his skating and the confidence there, he just has so many traits offensively that I think teams are going to adore. Plus, he's one of the youngest players of this draft class as well, so the runway is exponential. But then you have Misa, who is my number 1 in this draft class, and if you're lucky enough to get that first overall pick and select him, I think he would be a very worthy addition to your team. He's somebody that's just been so dominant all throughout this year. Unfortunately, because of some of the injuries he faced in the playoffs, isn't playing at this year's U18s, but it's somebody that I think would have been the best player on the ice there. You can see in 65 games in the OHL this season as the captain for Saginaw, 62 goals, 134 points. He's somebody that I think is a franchise type of centerman, somebody that is just going to be such an all-around player, and somebody that I think is going to lead your team in a lot of key areas. The offense, the overall play, the maturity in his game already is just fascinating to watch. And for me personally, I think he projects so well in the center position that I think for a lot of teams that might be their number one priority. If you even need a center at all, I think Michael Misa would be my pick personally. I'd be banging on the drums because this kid is just so much fun to watch. But now you get an idea of who could potentially go first overall. I think it is a duel between Schaefer and Michael Misa, which I think really makes this draft lottery very interesting, because I do think depending on whoever wins that first overall pick, we could see a change in who goes first overall. Because I think between Misa and Schaefer, they're both pretty even in terms of potential, in terms of talent. It's just going to come down to prospect and team need. There are a few prospects that for some might be in the similar tier of a Misa and a Schaefer, players like Porter Martone, James Hagens, Anton, Frondell, but actually going first overall I think is a far cry for these players, even though players like Frondell as well, who had a really good second half of the season, even though I think they're going to be projected to go high and will likely be top 5 picks, going first overall I just don't think is very realistic. It's going to be between Schaefer and Misa at the end of the day for 99.9% of teams, unless they go crazy. So now that we know the prospects most likely to go first overall, which teams do I think will win the lottery, and which teams do I personally want to see win? Now let's start with the 5 teams that I think are going to potentially win this draft lottery. Not the teams with the 5 best odds, but the teams I have the best gut feeling for. Number 5 starting out is where I'm going to have the Nashville Predators. They do have the 3rd best odds for that first overall pick, but something about them tells me that they could end up dropping in this draft lottery. Teams like San Jose, Chicago, of course, with better odds, but something about them just tells me that they're going to have more likelihood here. Number 4, I'm going to have Philadelphia in this position. They currently have the 4th best odds for that first overall pick. I think Philly's in a weird spot, though, with how they're trying to transition this team, and they've of course got the big time players like Matvei Michkov. They've gotten some other high-end picks like Jet Luchenko as well, but a draft lottery win, especially a player like Matthew Schaefer, I think could really change that team. I think they'll be fine if they end up settling around this spot. A player like Anton Frondell would fit pretty well, for example, but a Matthew Schaefer would do so well, I think, on that team. Number 3 is the Boston Bruins. They currently have the 5th best odds for that first overall pick, but man, the Bruins finally being this bad for I don't even know how long. It's been a long time since the Bruins have been in this type of lottery position. Something just tells me that the Bruins coming out, having this horrible season, and getting first overall almost immediately is something that's going to happen, and I would not put it past the NHL. Number 2, and this is a team that I do want to see potentially win the draft lottery, I'm going to go with the San Jose Sharks here. They have the best odds for the first overall pick, but something just tells me back-to-back lottery wins would not be in the cards here, and that leaves the Chicago Blackhawks in number 1. As much as I don't want to see it happen, I think Chicago getting gifted another first overall pick, I wouldn't be too surprised. Though gifted is a strong word considering they have the 2nd best odds for that first overall pick. Something about it just tells me it's going to happen. But now we go to the 5 teams that I want to see win the lottery the most. And of course, there are some teams in the back half of the draft lottery that aren't going to be going up to that first overall pick, but they can move up in the draft. So that's something that I could potentially want to see. And that factors into the first team here at number 5 in the Columbus Blue Jackets. They're a team that is so young, so good, and already has made such an impact in this year's playoff race. Unfortunately, they weren't able to make it, being the last team to get eliminated, but they're a team that has such a bright future, and I would love to see them add on to it with potentially some draft lottery luck. They haven't gotten much of it, but I would like to see them get potentially another top 5 pick. That would be really interesting to see, especially for a prospect pool that maybe could use another defenseman maybe. There's some ways they could go about it, though I think for Columbus, they don't necessarily need more lottery luck. I think they could use just fine if they stay at 13. At number 4, though, this is a team that I think could use a little more juice on the top end of the prospect pool, and that is the Seattle Kraken. I like their pool quite a bit. I think the depth is really quite strong for them, but I think a player like a Matthew Schaefer could be really interesting. They currently have the 6th best odds for first overall, currently at 7.5%, but I think in the Kraken's case, they're a team, of course, a pretty strong young core. They have some good pieces coming up, but I feel like they're a team that could use a little bit more juice even, and even if they were to get maybe to that 2nd overall pick, maybe a Porter Martone, maybe a Matthew Schaefer if he were to drop, I think things could get really interesting, though I think especially Schaefer will be a great fit on Seattle. At number 3, this is a team that I think could really use some juice at the top end as well, and that is the Detroit Red Wings. Now, they do have Axel Sandin-Pellikka coming through, and I think he is one of the best prospects in general in the NHL right now, but especially if they were to jump up and potentially get another forward prospect, I think that could do them quite a bit of good. I mean, I just imagine for Detroit, they can move up potentially 10 spots in the draft. If they were to get a number 3 and number 4 type of pick and a Porter Martone type of piece, that type of intensity and skill set in transition would be just so fun to watch on that team. So I think for the Red Wings especially, they have some holes they could fill with another top-end prospect, and I would like to see them get some lottery luck, which just has not been the case for them at any point in this rebuild/retool. Now, at number 2, of course, this is where I'm going to have the Montreal Canadiens. I will always wish for them to get some lottery luck, and they've gotten some good lottery luck over the last little bit, so I don't think they necessarily need to jump up in the draft. But imagine how interesting it would be after they get that Calgary first rounder. It's right now at 16th overall. They only have a 0.5% chance, according to Tankathon, of actually moving up in the draft, but just imagining how crazy it would be, especially since there's been so many rumors of them potentially trading both of these picks. Imagine if they were to enter the top 10, the top 5 potentially, and trade one of those picks, have that on the block. The type of value you could get back if you're the Habs would be immense. And if you're looking for a second line center potentially, I mean, that would be the way to get it. And last but not least, the team that I want to see win the draft lottery the most is the San Jose Sharks. They do have the best odds for it, but I think this draft lottery win would really cement themselves going forward. It isn't a Gavin McKenna or a Landon Dupont type of prospect, but I think especially if they were to get first overall, the pick would likely be Matthew Schaefer, and I think that would be transformative for their team. They have some good defensive prospects coming up. Sam Dickinson I love. Luca Cagnoni is looking like an absolute rock star, but I just imagine the left side coming up if you could have Schaefer, Dickinson, Cagnoni, and how unbelievable that would be. Instantly, maybe the best left side of the defense coming up in the league. The right side would have some issues to correct, but you'd have a great foundation to build upon. And if they were to go Michael Misa, that would be great too. I mean, you can't really go wrong if you're the San Jose Sharks in that position. They already have some great players coming up and already have some great players on the team already, but a player like a Schaefer, a player like a Misa, I think would really complete that rebuild long term. Now, I asked you guys on the YouTube community poll, who do you guys expect to win the first overall pick this year? And by a pretty clear margin, winning 48% of the vote, is the San Jose Sharks. Now, interestingly, Chicago, Nashville, the teams with the second, third best odds of the lottery, was below the other section. So a lot of people expecting a team outside of the top 3 to potentially get that lottery win. I know one by Potter 2010 fan said, I have a bad feeling it'll be the Bruins. Same here. But I think everybody's kind of expecting another San Jose win, which, again, I would not be mad at whatsoever. I think it would pretty much complete that rebuild long term. As much as it would sadden me to basically get it confirmed that McKenna, Dupont won't be San Jose Sharks because of the first overall rule and them getting too many, still, I think the Sharks will take another first overall pick this year, and especially I think it would really expedite that rebuild, really progress it further, especially if a Schaefer were to be brought on. That's pretty much, I think, the missing piece of the puzzle. A top pair, 100% number 1 defenseman. I think for San Jose, getting that type of player would be incredible for them and would complete everything. Now, if San Jose could potentially trade inside the top 15 and get a Ratty Murtka to pair with a Matthew Schaefer, that would be, I think, the ideal scenario. Getting another right D who could play up to that type of level would be incredible, though I think Matthew Schaefer, at the very least, is someone San Jose will take. Now, as for the rest of the preview, really the only thing left to talk about is the time of this NHL draft, happening on Monday, this May 5th, and for some reason, it's happening in like 3 days, and we still don't know the time that it's going to happen at, for some ungodly reason. I don't know why this is the case. Maybe it's because of the NHL playoffs and that whole thing, but I don't really understand why it's taken this long, especially since we've known the draft time specifically well before the draft lottery in years past. So I don't know what's happening there, but all you need to know is it's May 5th. At some point. Now, that is it for today's preview and predictions, but before we go, I want to talk about today's sponsor, BetUS TV, the place to make all your hockey picks all throughout this hockey season and on the NHL Draft Lottery as well. If you're feeling a specific team for first overall, that's the place to make your picks, and a big thank you to BetUS TV for sponsoring today's video. But thank you guys so much for tuning in today and tuning into the preview and predictions for the Draft Lottery. I want to know your thoughts down below. What is your thoughts on that first overall race between Matthew Schaefer, Michael Misa? Who would you want your team to take if they were to win first overall? And let me know down below, out of all the teams, especially if it's not your favorite team, who do you want to see win that first overall pick or even jump inside the top 3? I would love to hear your thoughts all down below. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, notification bell, comment down below all your thoughts, and make sure you share it with all the hockey fans you guys know online. And if you want to watch more videos of mine, make sure you click up here for all my 2025 draft content right in one playlist for you. I'll see you guys in the next one though, and have a fantastic hockey day. Goodbye.